Let me tell you something most people never learn. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to keep your power. Because the moment someone is rude, they're not testing your intelligence. They're testing your emotional control. Think about it. Rude comments are designed to do one thing, pull you out of your center. And the moment you react emotionally, you've already given them what they wanted. Here's the truth most people miss. You don't need sharper words. You don't need a clever comeback. You don't need to raise your voice. You need calm authority. Calm is not weakness. Calm is the clearest signal of strength. Anyone can get loud, anyone can get defensive, anyone can snap back, but staying composed, that takes discipline. When someone makes a rude comment, your first job is not to respond, it's to slow the moment down. Breathe, relax your shoulders, lower your tone, because when you slow down, they speed up. And when they speed up, everyone sees who's actually in control. Here's a powerful mindset shift. Rudeness is not a command. It's just information. Information that tells you this person is uncomfortable, insecure, or trying to dominate the interaction. And when you see it that way, you stop taking it personally. Now listen carefully. The strongest responses are often the shortest. Not sarcastic, not emotional, just clear. Sometimes as simple as, I hear you, or that's your opinion, or I'm not going to engage like that. That's it. No explanation, no justification, no emotional charge. Notice something important. You didn't attack them. You didn't submit either. You set the frame. And here's where most people lose their cool. They start explaining themselves. They talk faster. They say more. They try to be understood. But confidence doesn't rush. Confidence doesn't over-explain. Confidence speaks and stops. Silence, when used intentionally, is one of the most powerful responses you have. When you don't immediately fill the space, the other person feels it. They become aware of their tone, their words, their behavior. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is control. Now let's talk about respect. If you tolerate disrespect quietly, you teach people how to treat you. But if you respond calmly and firmly, you reset the boundary without creating conflict. That's the balance. Not aggressive, not passive. Grounded. You don't lose your cool by being kind. You lose your cool by trying to prove something. And you don't need to prove anything to someone who's being rude. Remember this, your composure is visible. People feel it, they respond to it. When you stay calm, you don't just protect your peace, you command the room. So the next time someone tests you, don't rush, don't react. Stand still, speak slow, say less, and walk away with your dignity intact. That's real power. Your calm is your leverage. The moment you stay composed, you regain control. Most people don't realize how quickly power shifts in an interaction. It doesn't shift when someone raises their voice or uses sharper words. It shifts in the quiet moment when one person refuses to be pulled into emotional chaos. Calm is not passive. Calm is an active decision to remain grounded when pressure is applied. And the instant you make that decision, you take the steering wheel back from whoever is trying to provoke you. When emotions rise, clarity drops. That's true in conversations, arguments, and moments of disrespect. A rude comment, a dismissive tone, or a deliberate insult is rarely about the words themselves. It's about control. The other person is testing whether they can dictate your emotional state. If you react immediately, especially with anger or defensiveness, you confirm that they can. Your calm breaks that pattern. It interrupts the script they were expecting and forces the situation to slow down on your terms. Staying composed doesn't mean you agree, approve, or surrender your position. It means you refuse to let someone else choose your emotional response for you. That refusal is powerful. People instinctively respect those who are emotionally self-directed. They sense it in the pace of your speech, the steadiness of your tone, and the lack of urgency in your movements. Calm signals that you are not threatened, not desperate, and not seeking validation. That signal alone reshapes the dynamic. There's a reason tense situations escalate when both sides react quickly. Speed amplifies emotion. Fast responses leave no space for thought, only impulse. Calm introduces space. Space allows you to choose your words instead of blurting them out. It allows you to hear what was actually said instead of what you felt. And most importantly, it allows the other person to reveal themselves. When you don't react, people often expose their insecurity, impatience, or lack of control without you having to say a word. Many people confuse calm with silence, but they are not the same. Calm can speak, calm can set boundaries, calm can say no. The difference is that calm does not rush to be understood. It does not stack explanations or pile on justifications. It states what needs to be stated and then stops. That restraint communicates confidence far more effectively than a long emotional defense ever could. Composure also protects you from regret. Words spoken in anger have a long lifespan. They replay in your mind long after the moment has passed. Calm responses rarely need to be taken back. When you remain composed, you leave interactions knowing you represented yourself well, regardless of how the other person behaved. That internal respect builds self-trust, and self-trust is a quiet form of authority that others can sense. Another overlooked truth is that calm deprives rudeness of its fuel. Disrespect feeds on reaction. When it doesn't get one, it weakens. The person being rude often expects escalation, conflict, or submission. Calm offers none of those. It leaves them standing alone with their behavior. In many cases, they soften, backtrack, or change their tone, not because you demanded it, but because your composure made their approach ineffective. Staying calm also keeps your perspective intact. When emotions take over, situations feel bigger than they are. A single comment turns into a personal attack. A small disagreement becomes a character judgment. Calm shrinks things back to their actual size. It reminds you that not every remark deserves a response, and not every opinion deserves space in your mind. That discernment is a form of control that extends far beyond a single conversation. The ability to stay composed is built through practice, not personality. It comes from pausing before responding, breathing before speaking, and recognizing emotional triggers without obeying them. Over time, calm becomes your default rather than your exception. People begin to approach you differently. They choose their words more carefully. They sense that attempts to provoke you will fail, and they adjust accordingly. In moments of pressure, calm becomes your anchor. It keeps you present instead of reactive, deliberate instead of defensive. While others are busy trying to win emotionally, you are preserving your clarity. And clarity always outlasts noise. The moment you stay composed, you don't just regain control of the conversation, you regain control of yourself, which is the only control that truly matters. Rudeness is information, not an invitation. You don't have to react to everything. Most people treat rude behavior as a signal that demands an immediate response, as if silence equals weakness or agreement. But rudeness is rarely a request for dialogue. It is a display of something happening inside the other person. When you understand that, the urgency to react disappears. What remains is choice, and choice is where your power lies. Every rude comment carries data. It reveals impatience, insecurity, frustration, or a desire to dominate the interaction. None of that requires your emotional participation. The moment you react automatically, you stop observing and start engaging. You move from awareness into entanglement. Treating rudeness as information allows you to stay detached enough to see what is actually unfolding rather than what it feels like in the moment. People often believe that not responding means letting disrespect slide. In reality, not every behavior deserves acknowledgement. Attention is currency. When you respond emotionally to rudeness, you reward it with focus and energy. When you don't, you send a quiet message that this approach doesn't work on you. That message is often stronger than any verbal correction. There is also a difference between responding and reacting. Reacting is fast, emotional, and driven by impulse. Responding is slow, deliberate, and intentional. Rudeness thrives on reaction. It loses momentum in the presence of calm awareness. When you pause, you regain the ability to decide whether a response is necessary at all. Often, the most effective choice is no response, because silence denies the other person the outcome they were seeking. Understanding rudeness as information also removes the personal sting. When someone is abrupt, sarcastic, or dismissive, it feels personal because it is directed at you. But the behavior usually says more about their internal state than your worth or actions. Seeing it as data instead of an attack protects your self-respect. You stop internalizing someone else's lack of control as a reflection of your value. Not reacting does not mean tolerating ongoing disrespect. It means you choose the timing and manner of your response. Sometimes that response is a calm boundary. Sometimes it is disengagement. Sometimes it is a brief statement that ends the interaction. The key difference is that you are not being pulled into someone else's emotional frame. You are acting from your own. There is strength in selectivity. When you react to everything, People learn that they can access your emotions easily. When you are selective, they learn that your attention must be earned. This shifts how others treat you. They become more measured, more careful, and more respectful, not because you demanded it, but because your behavior set a standard. Rudeness often escalates when it meets resistance fueled by emotion. Two reactive people create a loop that feeds on itself. One calm person breaks that loop. When you don't mirror the other person's tone, you interrupt the cycle. The interaction either de-escalates or ends. Both outcomes protect your peace. There is also a practical benefit to not reacting immediately. Time exposes intention. A comment that feels rude in the moment may lose its impact when you step back. You gain clarity about whether it was truly disrespectful or simply poorly phrased. That clarity prevents unnecessary conflict and preserves relationships that don't need to be damaged by impulsive responses. Choosing not to react trains your nervous system. Over time, your body learns that it doesn't need to go into fight mode every time someone is abrasive. This creates emotional resilience. You become harder to provoke not because you are numb, but because you are grounded. That grounding becomes visible to others and changes the way they approach you. When you stop treating rudeness as an invitation, you reclaim your agency. You decide what enters your mind, your emotions, and your day. You stop being available for every negative exchange and start conserving your energy for what actually matters. In doing so, you demonstrate a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. You simply move through situations with awareness, restraint, and self-respect, untouched by noise that was never meant for you to carry. Tone matters more than words. Calm delivery disarms aggression. Most conflicts don't escalate because of what is said, they escalate because of how it is said. People respond instinctively to tone long before they process meaning. A sharp voice, rushed pace, or defensive edge can turn neutral words into fuel for tension. On the other hand, a calm, steady delivery can soften even difficult messages. It signals safety, confidence, and control, which immediately lowers the emotional temperature of an interaction. When aggression enters a conversation, it is often searching for resistance. Raised voices invite raised voices. Tension invites tension. This is how arguments grow without either side fully understanding how it happened. Calm delivery interrupts this pattern. It introduces an unexpected element that forces the other person to recalibrate. When you speak slowly and evenly, you refuse to match their intensity. That refusal weakens the aggression because it has nothing to push against. Calm tone also changes how your words are interpreted. The same sentence spoken with irritation can sound dismissive or hostile, while spoken calmly it can sound firm and respectful. People are far more likely to listen when they don't feel attacked. Calm delivery keeps your message from being overshadowed by emotion. It allows the content of your words to be heard instead of lost in the noise of conflict. Another reason tone matters is that it communicates your internal state. Calm tone tells others that you are not threatened and not overwhelmed. It suggests that you are comfortable with the situation and capable of handling it. This alone can reduce aggressive behavior, because aggression often feeds on perceived weakness or instability. When someone senses that you are steady, they instinctively adjust their own behavior. Calm delivery also gives you time. Slower speech creates space for thought, both for you and for the person listening. It prevents impulsive replies and encourages reflection. Many aggressive exchanges de-escalate simply because one person slowed the pace. Silence between sentences can be more powerful than additional words. It signals confidence and invites the other person to reconsider their approach. There is a common misconception that calm tone means being soft or submissive. In reality, calm delivery can carry firmness without hostility. You can set boundaries, express disagreement, or say no without raising your voice. When firmness is paired with calm, it feels authoritative rather than confrontational. People may not like the message, but they are more likely to respect it. Aggression often masks insecurity or frustration. When met with calm, it loses its camouflage. The contrast makes the aggressive behavior more visible and less justified. This can cause the other person to become self-aware, sometimes even embarrassed by their own tone. Without you pointing it out, the calm delivery holds up a mirror. Calm tone also protects you from emotional contagion. Emotions spread quickly in conversations. Anger invites anger. Anxiety invites anxiety. Calm however, is also contagious. When one person remains composed, it becomes easier for the other to do the same. This is especially true in tense environments where emotions are already high. Over time, consistently calm delivery shapes how people engage with you. They learn that escalation won't work. They understand that conversations with you stay grounded. This reputation reduces future conflict before it even starts. People approach you with more care because they know you won't be pulled into chaos. Mastering tone is a practice. It involves awareness of your breathing, your pace, and your volume. It requires noticing when your voice tightens and choosing to relax it. These small adjustments have a large impact. They shift conversations from battles to exchanges, from reactions to responses. Calm delivery doesn't guarantee agreement, but it does create conditions for understanding. It keeps situations from spiraling and preserves your dignity regardless of the outcome. When you choose tone over intensity, you choose control over impulse. In doing so, you demonstrate a form of strength that doesn't need to dominate because it already commands the room. Short responses signal strength. Over-explaining weakens your position. Many people believe that being understood requires saying more, but in reality, confidence is often communicated through restraint. When you speak briefly and clearly, you signal that you trust your own position. You don't feel the need to justify every thought or defend every choice. That quiet certainty is felt immediately by others, even if they can't explain why. Over-explaining usually comes from discomfort. It appears when you sense resistance, judgment, or disagreement and rush to fill the space with details. The intention is often good, to clarify, to be fair, to avoid misunderstanding. But the effect is different. Excessive explanation can sound like doubt. It suggests that you are trying to convince rather than simply state. In conversations involving tension or rudeness, this shift gives away leverage. Short responses create balance. They keep the exchange from becoming one-sided or emotionally loaded. When you answer briefly, you allow the other person to carry their share of the conversation. You don't take responsibility for their reaction. This establishes an equal dynamic instead of one where you are scrambling to manage how you are perceived. Brevity also keeps your message clean. The more you talk, the more opportunities you give for your words to be misunderstood, challenged, or taken out of context. A short response leaves little room for distortion. It anchors the conversation instead of expanding it. In moments of conflict, containment is power. There is also an emotional aspect to brevity. When you say less, you reveal less. You don't expose your uncertainty, frustration, or need for approval. This emotional economy makes you harder to manipulate. People who over-explain often do so because they feel pressure to be liked or accepted. Short responses signal that you are comfortable even if the other person disagrees. Strong communicators understand that silence is part of speech. A brief statement followed by silence invites reflection. It shifts attention away from you and onto the other person. They are left to process what was said instead of immediately countering it. This pause can change the entire direction of an interaction. Over-explaining can also unintentionally validate rudeness. When someone challenges you unfairly and you respond with a long defense, you treat the challenge as reasonable. You imply that their tone or approach deserves accommodation. A short, calm response denies that validation. It keeps the focus on the content, not the provocation. This doesn't mean being vague or evasive. A short response can be precise. Precision communicates mastery. When you know your point well, you don't need layers of explanation. You can express it simply and move on. People associate simplicity with confidence because it suggests clarity of thought. Short responses also protect your energy. Long explanations require emotional labor. They pull you deeper into interactions that may not be worth your time. Brevity allows you to disengage without escalation. It gives you an exit without confrontation. Over time, practicing brevity reshapes how others interact with you. People learn that you are not easily pulled into debates or emotional spirals. They adjust their approach. Conversations become more respectful because your communication sets a boundary. Choosing short responses is not about withholding information. It is about choosing when and how much to share. It is an assertion that you don't owe anyone endless access to your reasoning. When you speak with clarity and then stop, you occupy your space confidently. Short responses shift the power dynamic quietly. They keep you grounded, reduce friction, and maintain dignity. By resisting the urge to over-explain, you communicate self-trust and composure. In moments where others expect you to unravel into words, your restraint becomes the strongest statement you can make. Silence can be a response. Not every comment deserves oxygen. In a world that rewards instant reactions, silence is often misunderstood. It is mistaken for weakness, avoidance, or lack of confidence. But silence, when chosen deliberately, is one of the most controlled responses available. It signals that you are not easily pulled, not easily provoked, and not obligated to engage with every stimulus that comes your way. Many comments are designed to extract a reaction rather than create understanding. Sarcasm, subtle digs, and outright rudeness often carry an unspoken demand for attention. When you respond, even defensively, you feed that demand. Silence starves it. Without engagement, the comment loses its momentum and its purpose. What was meant to provoke now hangs in the air, unsupported. Silence creates space, and space changes power dynamics. When you don't immediately respond, the focus shifts. The person who spoke becomes aware of their own words. They may replay what they said, question its impact, or feel the discomfort of being unanswered. That discomfort is not cruelty. It is a natural consequence of speaking without consideration. Silence allows accountability to surface without you having to enforce it. Choosing silence also protects your emotional clarity. Not every comment aligns with your values or deserves your energy. When you engage with everything, you scatter your attention and dilute your presence. Silence is a filter. It allows you to conserve your mental and emotional resources for interactions that matter. This selectivity communicates self-respect more loudly than any verbal boundary. There is a difference between silence and suppression. Suppression ignores your own feelings, while intentional silence acknowledges them without letting them dictate your behavior. You can feel irritated, surprised, or disappointed and still choose not to respond. That choice keeps your internal state intact while preventing unnecessary escalation. Silence also exposes intention. When someone truly wants resolution, they will adjust their approach. If met with silence, they may clarify, soften their tone, or rephrase their words. When someone simply wants to provoke, silence ends the game. Without a reaction, there is nothing to play against. This clarity helps you distinguish between conversations worth having and those worth leaving behind. In many situations, silence communicates boundaries more effectively than explanation. Words can be negotiated, argued, or dismissed. Silence is firm. It signals that a line has been crossed without you needing to announce it. This can be especially powerful in environments where direct confrontation would escalate conflict rather than resolve it. Silence also slows the pace of interactions. Fast exchanges amplify emotion. Silence interrupts that speed. It gives your nervous system time to settle and prevents impulsive responses that you might later regret. In that pause, you regain perspective. You remember that you are not required to solve every misunderstanding or correct every remark. People often fear silence because it feels like a loss of control. In reality, it is the opposite. When you are comfortable with silence, you demonstrate confidence. You show that you don't need constant validation or engagement to feel secure. This comfort unsettles those who rely on reactions to assert influence. Over time, consistent use of silence shapes how others treat you. People become more thoughtful before speaking. They sense that careless comments won't be met with immediate feedback. This creates a subtle but powerful shift in respect. Your presence alone sets the tone. Silence is not permanent withdrawal. It is a momentary choice that preserves dignity. You can always speak later when emotions have cooled and clarity has returned. Silence keeps that option open. Words spoken too soon close doors. Silence leaves them unlocked. When you allow silence to be part of your communication, you reclaim authority over your attention. You stop reacting out of habit and start responding with intention. Not every comment needs your voice. Some need your absence. By refusing to give oxygen to what was never meant to build understanding, you protect your peace and reinforce your sense of control in a world that constantly demands your reaction. Respect yourself first, others follow your lead. The way people treat you is often a reflection of what you tolerate, reinforce, or ignore. Self-respect is not announced, it is demonstrated through choices, boundaries, and behavior. Long before anyone decides how to act toward you, they observe how you act toward yourself. That observation quietly sets the rules of engagement. Respect begins internally. It shows up in the standards you maintain when no one is watching and in the limits you enforce when they are. When you dismiss your own discomfort, overextend to please others, or stay silent when something feels wrong, you communicate that your needs are flexible. People may not consciously exploit that signal, but they will respond to it. Human behavior naturally adjusts to the boundaries it encounters. Self-respect is often confused with arrogance or hostility, but it is neither. It is calm, grounded, and consistent. It does not require raising your voice or proving a point. It is reflected in the way you speak, the pace you move at, and the ease with which you say no. When you respect yourself, you don't rush to explain your decisions or apologize for having limits. That steadiness makes others more careful in how they approach you. Many people wait for respect before offering it to themselves. They hope that if others treat them well, they will feel worthy, but respect rarely works that way. It flows outward, not inward. When you treat yourself as valuable, you teach others how to do the same. When you don't, you unintentionally invite behavior that confirms your self-doubt. Respecting yourself also means choosing your responses deliberately. You don't engage in conversations that drain you or entertain behavior that undermines you. You recognize that your time and energy are finite. This selectivity communicates value without a single word. People sense when access to you is not automatic, and they adjust their behavior accordingly. Boundaries are a visible form of self-respect. They are not walls, they are guidelines. They clarify what is acceptable and what is not. When you enforce boundaries calmly and consistently, you create predictability. Others know where they stand. This reduces conflict and increases trust because people feel safer when expectations are clear. Self-respect also influences how you handle disagreement. You can disagree without hostility and assert yourself without aggression. You don't need to dominate to be heard. You don't need to withdraw to stay safe. This balanced posture earns respect even from those who don't agree with you, because it reflects inner stability. There is a quiet confidence that comes from self-respect. It is not loud or performative. It shows in your posture, your eye contact, and your willingness to pause before responding. This confidence makes it difficult for others to dismiss or belittle you, because it does not seek their approval. Approval loses its leverage when it is no longer your goal. When you respect yourself, you also model behavior for those around you. People learn what is possible by watching what you allow. Your example can influence relationships, workplaces, and social environments. Without lecturing or demanding change, your standards raise the level of interaction. Self-respect requires courage, especially at first. Enforcing boundaries may disappoint others who benefited from your lack of them. Staying true to yourself may create temporary discomfort. But over time, the quality of your interactions improves. The people who remain are those who can meet you at your level. Respect is not something you chase. It is something you cultivate by honoring your own values and limits. When you do, others sense it and respond, not because they are obligated to, but because your behavior sets a clear tone. By respecting yourself first, you create a foundation that guides how others treat you, establishing relationships built on clarity, dignity, and mutual regard.